Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode number 6, actually, or part 6 of the Art of the Storyteller. Happy New Year, happy 2018 to everybody. I hope you all had a great night last night and not suffering too greatly from your hangovers, if that's what you like to do. If not, I just hope you have a great, blessed and very happy New Year to you all. I'm going to do something a bit different this week, and I'll get onto that in a moment, but first of all, I'd like to mention thank you to everybody who signed up to receive their free copy of You-Po, the poetry collection, which I very much am passionate about and love. It seems like there's been some great feedback, and I'm looking forward to everyone enjoying their copy. And just so that you know, I've extended that offer up until January the 10th. So you've got a week and a bit in which to actually get your interest registered, as it were. But please enjoy. Those of you who've received it already, I sent out all the copies today, so I hope you all enjoy it greatly. And to those of you have not, there's still time to sign up. Please do, and enjoy greatly. I'll be continuing to advertise and promote this throughout the coming weeks, but for those of you who actually pay attention to these videos and don't just stare at me for a minute, I hope you enjoy it a great deal. I'd also like to add to the news that this week I am going to be doing a reading in fact, from a collaborative project I've been working on with the great and interesting Joe Roberts. It's going under the title at the moment, Darkness Within, Sable's Journey, though that may change. It's part of a trilogy. It is going to be essentially about the return of the Nephilim to the earth and the return of Enoch, he from the Book of, to try and combat them with the help of what would essentially be called a rogue Nephilim, but obviously he's not a rogue because he's actually a fairly nice guy, so you think, but there's more to come than that. The moment he's a nice guy, let's see if it stays that way. We shall soon see, in fact. It's going to be a very interesting, it's going to be an epic and dramatic story. It's going to be everything you could possibly imagine and more. There are going to be religious undertones about how we write a book set in the Bible without including some, at least, nod to the Bible as part of it. But allow me to break into what I want to talk about this week as well, before I get started, as what I'm going to read will illustrate what I'm going to talk about. And in advance, please excuse my acting skills, a little bit out of date, but I hope I'm able to translate the passion, the tension and the feeling as part of it. And if it's a little exaggerated, I apologise. I'm not a great actor and I have no money with which to hire a real one, so we will go from here. But this week we're talking about how to refine and give strength to your work. How do you have people read it? How do you have people come back? How do you draw and engage people? It's all going to be about passion, about skill, about love, about your immersion and involvement in what you're writing. Because if you do not feel when you're writing, you will not be able to write feeling in order to actually create that, to bring it out of other people. You have to engage, you have to feel that tension, that fear, that love, that happiness, that terror yourself. If you cannot feel it for yourself, you will not be able to have it translate into the words and the styles and the methods you use. Now, here's one thing, and I've been speaking to my colleague about this because he's fairly new to the world of writing. My style works, the way I write, the way I present things, is not going to work for everybody else. There are certain styles and methods that some people use to create their tension, to create their fear, to create their interest. I'll use the example of James Herbert in his supernatural stories. He has a way of making you afraid of every slight movement and noise and horrifying you. Stephen King is another one. Stephen King is very, very good at creating that atmosphere and that feel and that environment, which is why his stories translate into movies so well. Because in his books he's written in such a way that people can already envisage what he's written, so all he has to do is translate that into a visual format. Now let's be honest here. I doubt there's anybody in this room, virtual as it is, who does not deep down and in their heart desire to see their words come off of the page and into this visual format, into the world of films and movies and miniseries and dramas. Not one of you, I can guarantee. And here's the thing that I mentioned when I'm going into this. The whole style at the moment of keeping it short, keeping it to the point, keeping it snappy, it does not... It's good because it brings out the imagination of the reader, but engagement, pulling in, drawing in the reader, and using, shall we say, a more verbose style such as George R.R. Martin is famous for, detailed, him and Tolkien and people like that. Why do you think this verbose style of theirs has given them success in the visual format? Because they described everything with such detail, it was actually quite an easy task for the filmographers and the costume makers and the set designers just to pull it straight out of the book. And I've seen many documentaries on the Lord of the Rings movies, and they actually said they had such a rich mine of material, they had to choose which parts to leave in and which parts to leave out, so as not to overwhelm the reader, but they were able to create a world in Tolkien's vision, with Tolkien unfortunately having passed away many years ago before they wrote the screenplay. But he had given them such material that they were able to very easily recreate the world just as the reader had seen it, because of the amount of detail that Tolkien had involved. And for me, I always find, instead of minimizing the detail, instead of minimizing the amount of writing you do, give enough detail. Just enough. And that's the hard part. Don't overdo it and bore your readers to death. Let's not do a Charles Dickens here, where Charles Dickens, I remember from having to read Bleak House at school, he spent about 3 or 4 pages describing how it was raining to such great depth that I just felt my eyelids start to grow heavy as I was reading. And excuse that absolute idiot on the motorcycle who wants to advertise to all that he has a motorcycle there in the background and drowning everything out. I'll have to go and close the window. In fact, allow me to do that. One moment, please. There, window closed. So, let's carry on, shall we? Yeah, motorbikes. You can't have control over everything. I've got children, I've got neighbours, I've got people who like motorbikes all nearby. But I was saying, the right amount of detail creates a believable and immersible world. It creates a place where, yes, your readers need to have their imagination engaged. They need to be able to visualize it, they need to be able to see it. You don't need to give them everything, like the exact number of stitches on your character's gloves, or the precise shade of red on their cloak, or the exact arrangement and style of their teeth, unless it's important to the story. The precise shade of their eyes, unless, again, it's important to the story. Now, in my case, I make a point of mentioning the rumour of Alexander the Great having differently coloured eyes, because that's actually important to the story, because I use it as a device in the books that his eye colour shifts depending on the emotion he is feeling, because it is one of those things that has been described with green eyes, that green eyes can subtly change colour depending on the emotions, on the passions, on the humours of the person possessed of said eyes. So it's all interlinked, but I believe detail is important, but the right amount. And without further ado, I'll come back to just regular talking in a moment, but allow me to get my aide-memoire, because I do not have this scene memorized. But let us start without further ado. I am not going to pause or edit or hesitate. I'm going to read it exactly as it is. So let's begin. This is starting just after Enoch has delivered to Sable, the main Nephilim character, his version of events and how they led to meeting in England, Nottinghamshire in England, during the time of the Black Death in 1349. So we're discussing that. Enoch has just told his story. We come in where Sable is actually reacting to that and about to tell his story of the fall of Atlantis. So, excuse me. So, you're right there, Sable nodded. He is obtuse to say the very least. Enoch was of the opinion that such talk was disrespectful to the Most High Lord God. You want to hear disrespectfully? There was an edge to Sable's voice now. His pipe was hanging loose in his hand now. His breathing became almost laboured, skin flushing and eyes flashing. His jaw muscles were hard and the cords of his neck were standing out. Let me tell you about disrespectfully. Atlantis. The weather was usually warm and bright, quite pleasant most of the year. There was rain and a bit of cold, but it was never a place for freezing temperatures or snow. Being on what would later be known as the equator, to the Atlanteans the belt of the world, meant their seasons were steady and regular. It was pretty much warm all year round. There was a monsoon season in September by our calendar, and after that things got a little bit cooler, but aside from that it was mostly warm and dry. It was truly a beautiful place to live, and one where severe weather never happened. The earthquake, when it came, was incredible. Sable felt the very ground vibrate and lurch beneath his feet. The walls shook, and there was a strange droning roar he felt inside of his bones. He looked out of the window into his rooms in alarm. There were strange dancing lights on the horizon. The sky was blacker than night itself. Flashes of lightning were dancing across the ocean, tracing loosened paths towards a coastline. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing, just empty darkness. One could normally see for miles from up here. Now we could barely make out a stone's throw away. The ocean was leaping and lurching, and he saw what he thought were fish leaping into the air. That was until his mind calculated the distance, and he realized there were ships from the docks down below. Great galleys being tossed around like sticks in a tone. The roar came again, the rumbling growl. He felt it in his teeth. There was a strange flavour in the air. Something told him that outside may well be safer than inside. So he calmly but efficiently began strapping on his armour and made sure that his swords were firmly in place. He grabbed and filled his new pouch, replacing the one he had given to Enoch, with all the coins he could lay his hands on. And then took a quick stock of his surroundings. He had a terrible feeling that this would be the last time he saw this room, so whatever he left here would remain here. Again, the rippling deep roar tearing at the very air. It rose, it fell, and it growled. It had a deep brazen sound to it. It vibrated in his bones and in his blood. He felt fear rise inside of him. Oh no! He had heard this sound. He had heard of this sound, but he had never heard it with his own ears. The hushed, reverent tones with which many of his uncles described it was enough there. It was the sound of the end of the world. A harsh, brazen scream of God's wrath. Michael. It was the battle horn of the Archangel. That could only mean one thing. I have to get out of here fast. It felt like he was running on water, so much did the ground leap and rise beneath his feet. It was as if it were rippling and bending like a rug. The darkness was approaching quickly too, and he saw the waves leap up high toward the window he had just vacated. The rain came. Never before or since had he experienced rain like this. This was not just rain, this was an assault. Huge gobs of water smashed into him, causing actual pain, and he held up his arms in a vain effort to protect himself. He knew that he had to get off this island, but he had no idea how he was going to do that. It seemed he was not alone in this assessment either. The land was in panic. Slaves and citizens were running and screaming. People lay bleeding on the ground, turning the gathering water pink. Still others ran over them. Some struggling on, others falling only to be trampled themselves. It was chaos all around him. The docks. His only chance was the docks. He had to get there. There was no alternative. He had seen the ships being tossed into the air earlier, but what else was there? He heard the brazen scream of Michael's trumpet again, and the quiet but no less terrifying answers. He dared to look at the horizon, and he saw them. a multitude of winged shapes within the rain and the clouds. It was as if they were the storm. The army of heaven was coming. Enoch's promised judgment was here. Caught between the crashing waves and the embodiments of God's wrath, Sable opted for the uncertain death of the water. Surprisingly few people, Nephilim or otherwise, were present here. There were a few ships tied up. The huge docks held close to 100 ships most of the time, though there were less than half that number there now. There had to be close to 1,000 people pouring into the main square now, but no one seemed to know what to do. Abaddon and Lucifer and a number of fallen strode through the shell-shot looking Nephs and slaves. Lucifer looked solid and unshaken, all command. Abaddon looked furious and ready to kill somebody. There was blood on his father's arms and hands. Some splashed across his face. Sable doubted it was his own. Lucifer saw Sable and smiled grimly. He is afraid. Even the unshakable fallen archangel is afraid. He is hiding it very, very well. Lucifer gestured to the waiting docks. He was thinking the same sensible course of action as Sable was. They had to run downhill though, and the streets had become rivers. The screaming, blaring bray came again. And now he saw fit in Lucifer's eyes. Not sure how I'm going to do this. Crack, crack, boom! The bolt of lightning struck the ground almost at Sable's feet and threw him onto his back. His hair dancing on end, limbs jerking spasmodically, jaw clenched too tightly. His teeth hurt and there was blood in his mouth, his ears ringing madly. There was a smell of meat burning in his nostrils. 10 of the Nephs who had accompanied Lucifer had not been so fortunate as he. There was pitifully little of them left now, the cliched smoking boots and little else. The rain almost magically stopped. Sable first thought that was a good thing, until he saw the reason why. The angels were coming into land. Vast pinions stretched out to break. Michael stopped a few feet above the ground, slowly flapping his wings to remain aloft. Gone was a jovial and formally spoken fellow Sable had heard the fallen tell jokes about. His face was cold, eyes blazing. A great spear with lightning dancing down its length was clenched in his fist. He pointed the spear at Lucifer and shifted it to indicate the other fallen. Sable felt a smack on his arm and looked to see Lucifer's intense gaze. He looked down, and Sable followed that gaze in the secret battle language of hand movements and gestures. He told Sable his thoughts. Get the Nephilim to the boats. Now, fingers flicking quickly and emphatically dancing. I will occupy Michael and my brothers, but you must get as many away as you can. It is you that they want. I cannot save you all now, but maybe. His gestures stopped. Sable did not need to be told twice. Shouting over the maelstrom for others to follow him, he ran like hell itself was following him, which probably it was, down to the harbour. Though it was probably not wise, he could not help to look back as the Nephilim jostled and panicked their way onto the surviving ships. The ocean now was strangely calm, though the sky remained the colour of the darkest depths. The darkness even deeper than nightmare, darker than the nightmare he was about to witness. All told, close to 1,000 Nephilim were gathered on the decks of 25 ships. It was standing room only. All eyes were inexorably drawn to the hovering Michael, the silent legion behind him. Lucifer and his brethren had climbed the steps to what was called the Garden of the First Tree, where they were gathered in square formation under the shade of said tree, arrayed for battle, as if it were. It seemed fitting somehow. Down on the ships they could see everything. Somehow it seemed intentional to Sable. Lucifer was always the vain and dramatic one. He wanted his last stand to be witnessed. From down here they could see everything that happened. Lucifer! You have been judged by the Father, and I am here to deliver his judgment. His voice carried easily over the distance. Because of your perfidy, the sky is falling, and all life of flesh on earth shall be extinguished, to cleanse the stain of your evil on man. His voice was thunder, and his eyes were lightning. He was clad in an enameled armor of a deep cobalt blue. His chest, forearms, and legs were covered. In silver upon his chest was an omega, deeply carved. Strange patternings of angelic strip curled across the rest of the metal. He looked splendid and incredibly businesslike. In his hand he held a long silver spear, along which lightning still danced. Sable could see the winged multitude behind him, and there were millions of them, like unto a rainstorm themselves. This was judgment. And they really should be leaving, but every set of eyes was riveted on the unfolding confrontation on the hill. Brother, Michael's voice was softer now, but it still carried. Why? Why must it come to this again? Why must you continue this rebellion? Because it is right, Michael. Lucifer's equally soft voice carried through the silence to the ships as if the vacuum of sound created by 1,000 straining ears was sucking the slightest noise towards them. Because the Father is wrong, and he must see it, because he refuses to see how wrong he is. What you have done is wrong, Lucifer, Michael growled. How do you dare to continue to accuse the Most High? Still you dare? Somebody must, brother, and I am the only one with a nerve. You certainly have nerve, Lucifer. I am making something better, Michael, breeding a race which will please him and make him proud of all of his creations. We the first, and they. He gestured to the ships, causing everyone on board to duck and flinch as Michael's gaze fell upon them. The beginning of the new. Those, he indicated the mostly supine slaves, are an insult to Father. Look at what Adam and his wife did. Look at how they err and do nothing but fail to disappoint him. I have made Lucifer, you assume to think you can do better than the Father, to improve what he made, to presume you know better. I am not trying. You corrupted them with your evil and forced his hand, Lucifer. You know what is coming now. There is no appeal, no gentleness this time, no pulling the blow. This is it. They must be cleansed and undone. You know what you did, and the price of it. Lucifer bowed his head and remained silent. Sable nudged the Neph next to him and signed to him, "Cast off now." Silently he nodded and nudged the man next to him. It passed along the chain to the last man, who with painful and deliberate slowness began to undo the rope from the ship. Others eased their way to the rowing benches, and Sable watched as they took hold of the oars, and all the remaining 24 on the remaining 24 ships everyone did the same. The Neths on the other ships saw them and began to copy. Slowly, in deep silence with considered fear, the ships began to back out towards the ocean. Nothing could be heard but the silent, carefully restrained grunts of effort and the slap of wave on oar. They could just get clear of the harbour. Lucifer and your fallen rebels, to God, Michael roared. You have been judged and sentenced. We are here to complete your punishment. He quietly held up his spear on high, a strange light flickering under his skin, as if his very blood were fire and lightning, the electricity from the spear flowing over and under his skin. The ships were carefully backing out of the harbour, silent, awestruck, by terrified awestruck. No man or woman dared breathe, let alone speak. One stroke of exaggerated deliberateness at a time. Every creak or splash seemed to sound like a thunderclap. It was clear. Do you have anything to say, brother? Michael asked almost gently. Lucifer shook his head, and, together with at least 50 other fallen, he stood tall and proud. looking straight at the host suspended above him and right into Michael's eyes. Do it, and get it over with. You should beg his forgiveness, Lucifer, Michael pleaded. Throw yourself on his mercy. He is a forgiving God. Beg him with an open heart, that he may welcome you back into his home. I cannot, brother. Was that regret in his voice or resignation? Sable looked ahead of the ships, tearing his gaze away from the scene with a great effort of will. They were nearing the natural breakwater of the mouth of the harbour now. They needed 5 more minutes, and once clear of the bay and in open water, they could bend their oars, and maybe, before the rains returned, maybe. Please, Lucifer, return to us. He is so pained by your stubbornness and your accusals, Lucifer. Please ask forgiveness, brother. He held out a beseeching hand. Come home. It was like every single net on every single ship stopped breathing at the same time. All hands froze, all eyes locked on the 2 figures on the hill. Nothing else mattered. Nothing else existed. There was no sound but the soft splash of waves and the creak of the decks. Such was the pleading tone of Michael's voice, so strong his wish, so deep his desire, and so convincing his manner, that every single one of them was silently begging Lucifer to accept, to go home, to end this happily. Many fell on their knees, tears streaming down their faces, expressions twisted in anguish, hands held aloft in supplication. They waited, they watched, their hearts straining and every desire begging. No, Lucifer stated, and every voice on every ship cried out in horror. They wailed and lamented. Hans felt nervous from oars. Sable's eyes widened and fear tripped in his heart. No, Michael, I cannot. Cannot, Lucifer, or will not? Michael's voice dripped disgust, enunciating every word with barely controlled rage. On the ship's hands clenched on oars in rage also. Sable watched with curious detachment as his fellows fell under the magic of Michael's voice, muttering and murmuring, eyes wide and mouths poised to cry out, eyes angry. Why am I not? Why am I unaffected? He wondered. How are my ears proof to his spell? Will not? How can you be so cruel? The next sound was so unexpected, so dissonant and strange that no one could believe that they were actually hearing it. So incredible was the sound. Lucifer was laughing, long, hard, and mockingly. He was laughing as if he had just heard the best jest in the world. He clapped his hands and continued to vent his apparent mirth. They all stared at the 2 figures in shock and disbelief. Sable too was amused for some reason, but he could not fathom why. But, watching his colleagues, he decided to keep his smile hidden. Lucifer laughed and vented his mirth on and on and on, for what seemed like forever. Sable was trying desperately to contain himself. Michael was hanging there looking somewhere between bemused and embarrassed, his wings clipping the wind to hold him steady. Lucifer's laughter switched to a chuckle, the tall fallen shaking his head and walking towards Michael. He began to pace in a loose circle before his estranged brother. Michael, the stern and serious one, the general, the soldier, the pure and stainless one, so moral and about as flexible as a rock, about as intelligent and imaginative as one too. You know, the Father gifted us with intelligence and with the discernment that we ignore these gifts and become simply mindless slaves to his every word, that we do not think for ourselves. He waited for Michael to reply, but the flying figure simmered in silence. You think Father wanted us to be blithe idiots like them? Again he indicated the quivering slate. Do you really think that, Michael? Again the Archangel remained silent. I want to serve him. not by giving him what he asks for, but by giving him what he needs. I was created. We, he indicated his fallen brethren, Michael and the host by, were all created in his image to serve him. His plan needs us, or he would not have created us. He needs us to be what he created us to be. He made me as I am, who I am and how I think. The Father did that. The Father knows all. So how could he not know that I would do as I feel he needs me to do? I have watched the humans from the first day that Apolita and his wife first dumbly became aware of the garden. I followed them after they were expelled. I saw humans repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Look at how easily Cain fell, just like his father. Two disappointed God in an instant, without a second thought. Watch them, brother. All they do is disappoint our Father. Every chance they get, they will do what pleases them, not him. Do you think we had to force or cajole them to accept and make children with us? Do you think that they, again he gestured to the bay where the Nephilim ships were fast approaching open ocean, are the products of rape? No, they are not. The women were willing. They even started to beg to mate with us. They wanted what we gave them. We did not force them. Any given human being, given an attractive, though wrong course of action with no immediate consequences, will leap at the chance to break Father's commands. In his passion, his voice had risen considerably, and in the sudden silence his words echoed off the cliff walls. Michael continued to watch him passively. I knew what would happen if humans were left alone to do as they will. They would have wiped themselves out hundreds of years ago. I have given them not only the opposite of God, a darkness to contrast his light, but also a future. I am not corrupting and destroying them as you accuse, brother. No, I am not. I am improving them. Look at my Nephilim now. Yes, we had monsters and giants at first. Yes, the seed of the angels was too powerful for women to contain, but now we have those who look and act like humans, but better than humans. We have beings who are halfway between us and God, as far above the original humans as we are above them. You come to destroy the hope of the human race itself. Do not what Father asks, brother. He held out his hand in supplication. Do what he needs. The silence which followed the final echoes of Lucifer's words was complete and total. On the ships now clearing the circular bay of Atlan, every face was turned towards Lucifer, to Michael. They were absorbing every word. They felt honored, privileged to be what they were, part of the very future of the race from which they sprang to be, but destined to replace it and be the true masters of earth and pleasing in the eyes of God. Michael seemed to hesitate, at a loss for words. His lips quivered, his mouth opened and closed several times, but he spoke not. Behind him the countless hosts of heaven waited uncertainly, also ready to follow whatever Michael's command would be. Sable pushed gently to one side the tall man who was blocking his view and strained to make out the expression on the Archangel's face. He was torn, it seemed. Anger flickered and was gone. Confusion took his place. Uncertainty. Something resembling grief. Was that fear next? The broad tip of his spear, which had been pointed at Lucifer's face, wavered and began to drop downwards. His indecision was clear for all to see. A deep sadness crossed his beautiful features for a moment, and Lucifer smiled, holding out his hand again for Michael to grasp in fellowship, as they once had long ago. The Archangel looked at the hand, considering it as if it were some exotic flower he'd never seen before. His mouth opened again, and then it closed. He looked down at the ground, around at the gathered fallen, and out towards the escaping Nephilim. He glanced over his shoulder at the multitude of heaven. The tip of his spear pointed towards the ground, and looked for a moment like it would fall from his fingers, and he would reach out with his then empty hand and take hold of Lucifer's extended one. Every set of eyes was pulled towards this moment, focused completely on those two hands. Nothing else mattered but the outcome of this moment. Once those two hands met, everything would change. On the Nephilim ships, all oars were still. The rowers ready to return victoriously to Atlan in a heartbeat, rather than flee in terror. Michael's hand twitched. His spear remained loosely held in his fingers still. Lucifer's hand remained directed up towards him, frozen in time. This image was etched upon the eyeballs of every being present. Lucifer offering peace and a future for them all. A truce. The war over before it started, and the beginning of a glorious new age. Sable found he was holding his breath. Again, Michael, as if waking from a dream, looked down at Lucifer's open hand. He looked for what seemed like centuries to all watching. He opened his mouth, licked his lips, and looked down at his spear, down at the lightning flickering still. His wings twitched nervously. Lucifer smiled and was about to speak. He never got the words out. Michael's face turned blank. He tightened the grip on his spear and pointed it back at Lucifer, slapping the extended hand away with the blade. God has spoken. God has judged, he said through gritted teeth, his eyes blazing. I exist to obey the Father. Repent, Lucifer. No, I will not repent when I have not even sinned. So, Michael said, sadly shaking his head. I loved you once, but you're my brother no longer. Lightning arching like a Cintiq snakes down his spear, he pointed it at Lucifer. His face calm and bland, Lucifer met Michael's pain gaze. Do it. And that's where I'm going to stop for today. Hope you liked that, and this has been a little bit longer, but I hope my diction was good and everything was there. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope perhaps you learned something from it. And I hope my acting wasn't too bad and very Shakespearean and over the top. But I'd like to leave you with one more example that has been in my head. Many of you may have heard of the former poet laureate from many years ago, Alfred Lord Tennyson, who wrote a very famous poem called The Charge of the Light Brigade. This, I know, is about poetry, but as you know, I am a poet too. I just released a book thereof. And I feel nothing captures passion and feeling better than this passage from the poem. It's called The Charge of the Light Brigade. It was set during the Crimean War of British imperial colonialism. And it was about a charge of the Light Brigade, who were light horse cavalry, who were meant to go ahead behind the heavy cavalry in circle and take positions. For some reason, an order was misunderstood. Some say they were told not to charge the guns or to get away from the guns, but it was misheard, and the officer told them to charge the guns. As true lower soldiers did, they charged. And this is the story. And it's just one part of it. And it's just to give you the meter. So, here we go. So, stormed at with shot and shell, wild horse and hero fell, those who had fought so well, but not the 600. You just notice the way that you can imagine the horses charging, and I recommend, that's all I can remember at this moment in time. It just came to me right now. Think of how your poetry and your writing can represent pace and movement. If you notice, I used a lot of short phrases, a lot of strong words, a lot of passion-inducing words and phrases, and some dialogue which told a lot more than long bursts of text could have told. But I'm going to leave you for this week because we're nearing the 40-minute mark and I took a lot longer than I intended. But again, thank you for watching, guys. Those of you who have not signed up for your free book, please do so now. I'm intending to give away as many as I can to those who ask. And all of you who sign up, incidentally, the link is going to be in the article, by the way. All of you who sign up will get access to what is going to be come next month, I think, or the month after, the exclusive members area, where I will share excerpts from this book I just read from, exclusive content, exclusive videos, exclusive everything I can come up with, downloads of entire books even, once I've actually done my edit in this coming year. But either way, enjoy all, have a happy new year again, and thank you for watching. I will see you all next week.